Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to week 2 of my legato 3 notes per string tutorial, kind of watching me struggle through it type thing. Hopefully you'll get something out of it. If you want to check out week 1, you know, that's the sort of foundation of it. I'll drop a link in the description. I'll be putting together a playlist for all of the weeks. Yeah, so week 2. I've been practicing this for about a week now, and just to recap, I'm basically learning 2 parts of this technique: the theory and the actual mechanics of learning how to sort of play kind of this position really, which is a tone and another followed by another tone. So that's getting this sort of, you know, the index and the middle finger spaced out like that, which is quite a difficult technique to learn for me anyway. So that's like the sort of mechanical side of it. So yeah, so this week, I mean, probably worth mentioning how much I've actually been practicing. I'd say I've probably done on average about half an hour maybe every day, you know, when I can really. I know that doesn't sound like much. To be honest, I haven't really made that much progress, but I think I have made some progress, right? So anyway, I think if you want the full recap, just watch last week's video. But just to quickly recap, legato 3 notes per string. Legato basically means smoothly in Italian, and it's just basically playing a phrase. You're picking the first note, and then you're either hammering on or pulling off the rest of the notes. So this would be a legato kind of scale. And as you can probably tell, I haven't quite, you know, got there yet, but yeah. So that's what it is. The actual theory side of it, and again, I covered this last week. The beauty of learning this technique, 3 notes per string, is you've only really got 3 patterns to learn, right? You've got tone, tone, you've got semitone, tone, and you've got tone, semitone. That's the only patterns that you've got, and there's a sequence of those patterns as well, which are predictable, and that you can learn to sort of, you know, get your bearings of the fingerboard, which is another good thing about this. I mean, I am sort of, you know, repeating myself a little bit on last week, but I think it's important to do, you know, just get into your head, or get into my head, that, you know, we're going from learning, you know, the 5 box positions as you would do like the pentatonic scale or the major scale. We're moving away from that into just learning those 3 patterns. Now again, just to recap, those patterns are pattern 1, which is tone, tone. So starting on A, that's pattern 1, and then you play that again, pattern 1 again. And then pattern 2, which is semitone, tone, and then again. And then pattern 3, which is tone, semitone. And then again, pattern 3. So the way it's sequenced is 2 pattern 1s, followed by 2 pattern 2s, followed by 2 pattern 3s. Dead easy. And then it starts again with a pattern 1 in the middle, and then you're starting with another 2 pattern 1s again. So it's like starting from the root, pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 3, finishing on pattern 1, and then starting again on pattern 1, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 2, pattern 3, pattern 3. So that's the sequence, right? So, I mean, really, my sort of progress this week has been that, you know, the patterns, as opposed to the actual mechanics of trying to get my fingers to play this. You know, the pattern 1, tone, tone. Yeah, so just a word on the actual left hand positioning, right? So, as I said in week 1 video, you know, Tom Quayle is a master at this, and he recommends your thumb is placed in line with your index finger, sorry, with your middle finger. Now, I'm finding that really difficult, right? Naturally, my thumb wants to be sort of in line with my index finger, or even further back than that. That's its natural position. But the problem is, I've found, is if you just don't think about the thumb and let it just drift into its own natural position, this, and it's sort of back here, I don't know if you can say that, it's back here, so it's behind even the index finger. What you'll find is this reach becomes really difficult or almost impossible. So the thumb has got to be really, for me anyway, in between the index and the middle finger. You know, it's very uncomfortable for me to have it positioned in line with the index finger. I think it's better for me anyway in between the index and the middle finger. That feels more natural, although it doesn't feel as natural as just moving it back there, right? So that's one thing I've discovered, and that's only going to come with practice. So another thing that I've discovered is the root notes, you know, and by the way, you know, all this knowledge, I always remember Russ Shipton's Guide to Rock and Pop Guitar when I was first learning the guitar. And what he said was, it doesn't matter what you do, it all gets sort of stored in your guitar brain, right? So you could be learning chords, you could be learning, you know, the 5 box shapes, you could be learning, you know, the major scale, you could be learning this. Everything is connected, you know, nothing is wasted. If you're practicing something on the guitar, it's going to be stored into your guitar box, brain box of knowledge, and it's all connected and it's all good, it's all beneficial. So no matter what you do, no matter what you practice, I promise you, you won't be wasting time. And I don't feel like I'm wasting my time doing this, because what I have discovered, I'm just going to digress a little bit, is I've discovered where the root notes are, right? So I mean, the first one is obvious. I'm starting on A, the root note is here. So the root note is on the first note of the first position, right? So it's here, first position, or the first tone, in other words. There's the root. So remember, we're going to play 2 of them. And the next root note is when you get on to position 2, it's the second note of position 2, right? That's a root note. So root note here, first position, first note. And the root note is again on the second note of the second position. Now if I carry on, and the next root note is on the third note of the third position. So first note of the first position, second note of the second position, and the third note of the third position. Now that's easy to remember as well. So all we've got is, we've got 3 sequences, sequence 1, sequence 2, sequence 3. And the root note is on the first of sequence 1, the second of sequence 2, and the third of sequence 3. And I think that's a really valuable thing to remember, right, when you're doing this. So say, for example, if you're starting on the root and you end up here, that's a root note. Now, I know that that's a root note. So not only can we sort of go through these steps vertically like this, that's vertical. If we know where the root notes are, so the root note's here, right, which is the second position of there, right, but we can easily just say, make that the first position by just moving your finger. Now we're on the root, now we're on the first position again. Now we can go horizontally, right? Remember, position 1. So we can go horizontal, and it's the same sequence again. Now, a couple of things I'm finding pretty tricky, right? The first is, it's just remembering that sort of tuning discrepancy between the G and the B. So remember, when you're moving from the G to the B, you're moving up a fret, right? Because of the tuning discrepancy, right? So, for example, just from the start, position 1, sorry. So it's all just the same, but now we're going to move from the G to the B. See, we've moved up 1 fret. We're not going, that's how it's up 1 fret. And then the next one is the same. Yeah, so you just shift it up one fret when you're going from B to G, or vice versa. And then when you go from G to B, when you're on the B, it just carries on. So that's useful to know, right? Well, sorry, it's not useful to know, it's something that will trip you up quite a lot, and it's difficult to remember because everything else that we're learning here is very sort of strict and easy to remember. And yeah, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, the sequences, it's dead easy, but until you get to the discrepancy between the G and the B. So anyway, the other thing that I found quite difficult, which I wasn't expecting, is, I mean, obviously that stretch is going to take some work, you know, the tone. But what I wasn't expecting is this is quite difficult. The actual, you know, your ring finger and swapping between your middle finger and your ring finger for sequence 2 and 3, right? So say for example you're here on sequence 2, no problem, because that's just using the same pattern with, you know, the index, middle, pinky. I've got no problem with that. But when you switch to position 3, then your ring finger comes into it, so it's middle, ring, middle, ring. So it's swapping between the middle and the ring finger. That needs practice for me. It won't be the same for everybody, but I don't know why. You know, I do use, you know, the ring finger a lot for bending and stuff, but it just feels different swapping between, you know, using it with the pinky all the time. So yeah, and just talking about, you know, these skills running horizontally, you know, what I've also been practicing is, you know, so we sort of go up, so we're here, I'm going to go horizontal now, so 1, 2, sorry, move up one fret, that's the root again, yeah, because we're in position 2, remember. But remember, it's a root, so we can easily just say, right, well that's position 2, well let's just flick it to the pinky. Now we're position 3. Sorry. Remember, the root is on the 3rd note of the first sequence of position 3. So this is the first sequence 3 here. Sequence 2, sequence 2. See, it's all connected. So, you know, you could be up here. That's a root. You know, you're major scales, so you know the 7th is there, semitone down. We know we're going straight to position 2 after that. We know that's 3. And we know the next one's 2. We know the next one horizontally is another position 3. See? And we know this is the second of the position 3's up plane, so we know that the next one down to that vertically is another position 3. Oops, sorry. Sorry. So that's the root. So, sorry, I'll do that again, right? That's position the root. Yeah, so you get what I'm trying to say, right? They're linked vertically and horizontally. So you're going across the fingerboard and it's all just tones and semitones. That's all it is, isn't it? You know? Now, so that's it really. That's the progress that I've made this week. Like I say, half an hour a day. Now what I want to do for next week is I want to kind of focus more on the mechanical aspect of it, right? So I'm going to kind of get the metronome out and I'm going to start slow. You've always got to start slow. And I'm going to basically see where I am. So and then I'm going to gradually increase the tempo. So next week's video, hopefully, if I get some practice in, I haven't got much done this week, but I'm going to try and build up the speed now that I've sort of got an awareness of the positioning, working on that ring index to middle. I'll do it again. Yeah, middle to ring finger switches between position 2 and position 3. But let's see how it goes. Anyway, so you know, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you know you're getting something out of watching me struggle with a very difficult technique. But you know, like anything with the guitar, I always remember when I try to learn bar chords the first time, even if you're sort of practicing for like half an hour every day, you don't really start seeing the results, you know, until weeks later. Really, you're talking about a weekly thing, incremental improvements on a weekly, monthly basis. Really, you're not going to really see an improvement after a day. So you know, just bear that in mind. This sort of stuff is worth sticking to. You know, if you've seen players like Tom Quayle and you know John Cody and Holdsworth and you know Satriani, players like that, they can just blast up and down the fingerboard effortlessly. It's so impressive, and I just want to sort of get that in my bag of sort of guitar technique tricks really. But I'm starting to waffle, so I guess this is getting towards the end of the video. Thanks for watching, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing. I appreciate all your support. Getting up to about 800-ish, just under subscribers. I'm looking to get that 1,000. Hope you can help us out. Hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you on week 3 next week. See you in a bit. Bye.